Hello, everyone. I've opened the gate so that everyone can join in. We'll start in about 2 or 3 minutes. Always happy to see the usuals. And, their names that we're always happy to see coming from session to session. Nadia, it's been a while. Madame Awab. Rachel. Names that I haven't seen for a while. That's also nice. We'll just give another minute to people to join. We're 11 o'clock Eastern time right now, so just a few seconds again. Yeah, then we should have had the Christmas music or holiday music just to put us in the mood. We don't have snow yet. It's not no, doesn't put us in the mood yet, but music would have been also
it's almost sad.
Yeah, we're used to, anyway, at least where we live up in Montreal. You know, usually at this time of year we start having snow. It's coming, I think, next week. So
yeah.
Good. I think it's about time. It's 1:11, so we'll give it a go. The session is recorded for anyone that is joining a bit later. We'll have that recording sent over to everyone that registered next week, early next week, most likely. So, hello, Denis.
Hello, Dominic. How are you?
Pretty good, thanks. Always nice to do this with you. Good sidekick to do those sessions. So let's jump right in. Today we have a timesheets beyond time entry. So we're starting this to open the box for timesheets. There's a lot of topics that we can cover, obviously on timesheets. But so that we won't cover everything today, but we're covering a few things. So we said that we're going from doing timesheet management from setting up to approval. So we're covering here in the mindset of a timesheet, time and expense type of project, making sure that we are set right to start doing timesheets, and eventually, if we need to do any corrections, a few hints on how to detect that, and eventually how to correct it too. And then obviously we'll go to Q&A and try to keep time at the end to answer Q&A. And we have, I forgot to present also, we have Natalie and Martin helping us on this one here to manage the Q&A session. So if you have any questions, go ahead in the Q&A for Zoom. And Natalie and Martin will help you and answer a few of those live by the chat. So, usual disclaimer, we're working in V44 release now, so a few things you might see that might be different. I have a few, we have a few features here that we're going to show from that latest release related to timesheets, but usually most of the mechanisms that we're talking about would be valid for V39 and the other versions too. So really focusing on project management, time and execution kind of module here. So starting from a project, and then we'll go into timesheets and review that. So that's going to be our focus. So let's do that. Let me flip here to the environment. So I'm kind of starting here on a project, segue on the previous sessions we did on resource planning and the two previous ones. So on a project that is already assigned, already somewhat started. So we have project assignments at this point already on the project. want to start on kind of explaining and circling back on how the bill rate gets to an assignment, because eventually that's the bill rate that we're going to use for timesheets. So first of all, we did mention that in the previous session, but do want to circle back on it. Project assignments get a bill rate. There's two main ways to get bill rates here. First, if you are on a project where you do have a rate card is really a collection of roles assigned to a rate. So if you do have a rate card, as you're assigning a project resource to a project, it will inherit the bill rate from that related role in the rate card. If there's no rate card or the role is not listed in that rate card, then the bill rate from the project resource record will be used. So you might have a bill rate here or not, depending on your model. So if you don't have any rate card or no role, then the project assignment gets the bill rate from that. Then if none of them are there, then your bill rate most likely would be 0 or nothing. So this one here was left as blank for a reason. We'll see. It's kind of to detect the error and to see how we can manage it later. Good. So when we get forward, then now we go and eventually we'll get timesheets in. So the timesheet can get will most likely get the rate or the bill rate from the project assignment. I think there's another way, Denis, that you wanted to mention too, of where the timesheet can get their rates from.
Yeah, absolutely. I was about to jump in. So we're talking about bill rate and also cost rate, and just to add that little detail, but also what people are sometimes forgetting, or another option that would be available, is to use from the task. There's a possibility to add a rate specifically to this task. So for example, you can go on the workspace and add this task rate column, and by adding a rate there, it would only mean that it will prevail any other rate, which means whoever's logging time on this task would be billed at exactly the same rate. So this is very useful. For example, like we have ongoing support for bank of hours. This is an option that is very helpful when you have to manage these kind of situation. Anything else that you're thinking on the project assignment, maybe that we did not cover, Dominic?
Yes, two things. Yeah, you did mention the bill rate, the cost rate. So cost rate, I haven't mentioned it, but that would come from the project resource. Even if you're not in a TNE, you'll want to have the cost rates loaded so that you can keep track of that. So that's one thing I forgot to mention. And the other thing is also status. So if you're playing around with the statuses, if you have soft books and pipeline and you're kind of working with that, you want to make sure that your project assignment is set to booked when you're ready to start logging time. Softbook would not provide access to the resource to the project. So really, your ticket to ride is really to be booked as a project assignment on the project.
Yeah, so we mentioned a lot of different little details, some at the project assignment level, some other at the task level, but there's also items that are coming from the project that could impact the interaction with the time entry. So for those of you who have the option close time entry available on the project, if this one is checked, this will prevent people from being able to log time. That's another interaction with the timesheet. Same thing with the start date of your project, or if the start date is in the future, you might not see this project as available to log your time. Same thing with the archived option. Is if the project is archived, that's it. You would not be able to log time, and all of the mentioned above options related to templates. So when projects are template, obviously you don't want your resources to log time against them. So selecting one of these options would have an impact. But I think we have a little present for our participants, Dominic.
Yeah, present is probably a big word here. In this case, I've prepared a cheat sheet of what to check in the deck, and I will send the deck along later. So I'm not going to list all those and kind of have too much text to read. I'll send the deck along with the recording, so you can use that as a cheat sheet to check on your projects. And obviously there's a few things that we're covering that could be, kind of identified as basics. We have a broad range, and I like to repeat that because on our webinars, we have, on new onboardees and people that have been using the tool for a long time. So some stuff might look obvious for some of you, but we like to kind of cover so that everyone gets a bit of a new stuff to learn about. So at this point already, we're in a TNE again, kind of recalling that. We have our project assignments, we have the bill rates, so we're kind of ready. We have our assignments done, so we're ready to jump into more of the time entry aspect of things. So Denis, that would be up to you.
Thank you, Dominic. So I was just thinking, there's no small present to me. We cannot be too precious. I think that cheat sheet will be appreciated by a lot of our participants. To get back on my topic, I just wanted to talk to you about that main My Timesheet tool, which is the main time entry component. Of course, it does what a standard timesheet would do, but beyond all of the regular task selecting or hour logging duties, My Timesheet offers way more, and that's related to the title of this session. We know a situation our customers are regularly facing with the timesheets, and it's really about the accuracy and even the submittal of the timesheet. So we like to direct them to the options that we will discuss. The first one being the copy from schedule at the beginning of the week. This could help your resources identify the work to be done. So by clicking the option, it's just taking anything that is related to tasks scheduled and bringing it at the top, creating lines for the resource to be ready to start logging time in their week. Same thing with the option of copy from previous week. Instead of looking at anything that is scheduled at the task level, it will bring any duties or any task you started logging time from the previous week. Obviously, at the beginning of the week, you can do one of these or both, but that's the start of your week. You can then clean the lines, removing the one you don't want to see, but these are time-saving option because it avoids resources from getting from forgetting assignments, and also it might also inform resources of any new assignments they might not be aware of. So this is really some cool features to start relying on and help your resources. This is going to save a lot of time for them and bring a lot of value for you as well.
And this is what I could jump in with my new feature alert here, where we have those new toggles in the bottom. So most of you, if you're on 44, you most likely have seen that, but we have those toggles where we're kind of connecting also here with what we've talked in the 2 previous sessions with resource planning. So copy from schedule with the sessions we had in September when you're planning at the task level, that's what it's using. But here, PAS component, project assignment schedule component, and task assignment schedule component. It's not the sexiest names, but it's really tells what it needs to say. So really, we're showing here any hours that you are assigned to work on per project based on whatever's in the planner. So here at the project level, so it'd be just by project. If I was to log and toggle that TAS one, then all tasks that I'm planned to work on then would be showing per day. So up top here, we do have those values. Schedule, maybe some of you are reusing that, schedule, bill, and var. So schedule, total number of hours that you're scheduled for that task. But here you have a detail for this week. So the numbers might be different, but here is the detail for this week. Now this is showing the total. The TAS is new. PAS was available already. There's an option with the V43 and less in the custom settings to show my project hours. So that's a component that was already available, just that it was fixed. Now we have it on toggle if you want to show or not.
So once again, beyond time entry, because all of these components will help you encourage your resources to go on their My Timesheet. And if you have issues with having them logging their time daily and saving their time so that they submit it at the end of the week, at least if you encourage them to go on the My Timesheet and benefit from these features, it's just familiarizing them with the interface and getting them more familiar. I'm sure it's gonna help you to take advantage of having them more in this interface. But My Timesheet is not only the only option to log your time. Obviously, just as a reminder, some of you might forget, but we have the global action that is out of the box, which allow you to enter time quickly. So by clicking on global action, you've got the QuickTime. This interface is also available straight on client tasks out of the box and could be added on a project if you are managing at the project level. But also it is available on the right side panel. So from the workspace or the Kanban tool, as soon as you're expanding the right side panel of a task, you would have that time thumbnail. That's it. Time thumbnail at the top where you can see some hours that could have been logged, or start the clock if you like to use this functionality as well. And of course, there's the mobile timesheet. So if you got the mobile Salesforce mobile application, the client mobile timesheet will be available from there as well.
I'll take a question on the fly here because we're still right into the context. So Cohen's asking what the PS and TAS here, those two toggles I haven't covered. And good point, Cohen. Thanks. So PAS and TAS would add a new column here. So that's really kind of leveraging the summarizing the number of hours that you have assigned at the project level or the task level for that week specifically. So schedule, as I said, would be for the whole task, number of hours total assigned to you for that task. But here TAS, PS would be specific for this week at the project or at the task level. Great. So yeah, we do circle back on how to enter a timesheet, you know, as again, it's just that sometimes some of those means are not necessarily known or even for a long time customer. You know, one of them is the QuickTime, which is quite handy because you can, wherever in Salesforce, start logging your time. You don't need to reach for your timesheet or reach for the actual project. This one's quite handy. Might not just be in your publisher layout when you and your Salesforce setup, sorry, looking for my words. So look with your solution or Salesforce admin to have that in.
And I think we're gonna nail a very interesting topic, because like logging time, entering time is one thing, but a lot of our customers sometimes are asking us the question, how could I fix what if I logged or I entered the wrong date or the wrong rate? So really everything about timesheet correction. Could you help us with that?
Yeah, let's jump right. So we did our timesheet, we saved it. Obviously, if we haven't submitted it, you know, usually can go back and correct. If it was submit, it could be recalled by the user so that they do corrections until it's approved if the recall button was configured and the process was configured. But this is available, recall. Else, when we get to timesheet approval, and this, I'm kind of jumping side here and going in more of a you know, practice lead or project manager role, where I'm looking into approving those timesheets. So mass timesheet approval here is a tool, you know, that's usually, you don't have just but a few records to approve in a month or in a week. So the mass timesheet is gathering all the timesheets that are pending to you for a certain date range. So it was preloaded. I'll just redo the exercise here. So for a date range, for a certain set of presets or filtering options here, I'm searching for all timesheets that you should be having here. Let me just refresh. I think it was I've been too long. So all timesheets that are pending your approval based on your role, then you'd get all that listed. Another kind of new feature alert here. I think it's pretty handy here. It was requested by lots of customers. It's a small thing that makes big difference. So group by is a new options that we have. So now we're grouped by resource, getting all timesheets underneath for that same resource. But now we have other options where we can group by project, role, or account. That becomes, I think, quite handy when you're, let's say you're for an account, you're trying to clear up any pending items to be invoiced. So you want to make sure you just fast track based on some criteria. So that's kind of a neat way to look better into all the timesheets that you have to look into. So kind of the core topic here is getting the information or the bill right on your timesheets. So we've started looking in the project assignment, but one way, and probably not the most obvious, but at least it's one way. We'll see other ways using reports just after. But one way of looking and making sure that we're right here is just putting some attention on looking into the different results that we have when we're approving those timesheets. So I see here that I have, 2 projects with 0 bill amount. And most likely I know that this is an ongoing managed service. So most likely a time and expense project. So having a 0 here kind of flags me to say there might be something odd with this project. So that would be one way of finding out, so that you can obviously dig into that timesheet to kind of get more details. So if I click on the hyperlink on the left side, then I'm getting into the timesheet if I want to investigate. So I do confirm bill amount is 0. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I do have some hours, and if I still scroll down here, I'm on a timesheet record. So I'll have access to the child record of all those too. So I do see that my timesheet detail, so the line itself, does not have a bill rate. So there's my issue. What I'll do is I'll probably dig deeper to find the root cause of that, because that's kind of just a representation of my project. So what I would do then here is go to my project and do the correction, so that if I look into my project assignments, I see that, okay, Colin Happy does not have a bill rate. So different reasons for that. Maybe, the rate card may not have the right role there. So before I do correct, because ultimately I'll correct the project assignments, but I'll just want to make sure that in my rate card, I do have something for developer. So yes, I do have a rate here for developer, so I'm good. We just want to double check on that, because if you do have another resource eventually that you add as a developer and you're missing that, you might regenerate the issue of not having a bill rate. So that's just one thing you'd want to check on your project, assuring that you have a proper rate card. It could have been that you've assigned a role that shouldn't have been also. And then, so, you have those questions you need to ask yourselves.
So Dominic, I guess one recommendation to our customers is to really maybe taking a look at all of your rate cards and making sure that all of your roles are represented with a rate in their rate cards, so that they will never face the situation where a role would not have any rate.
Yep. Yeah, so basically I've looked into my rate card, sorry. And then what I will want to do here is to correct my project assignment. So if you add that rate card role in there, it's not necessarily going to correct your project assignment. So I would just go in here and change my rates so that I have 125. We'll see that basically this is driving, as long as your assigned timesheets are not approved. When you approve a timesheet, it locks it in. So there won't be any automation that will be possible, because it's locked in. There might be invoice. There's other consequences when it's approved. But until it's approved, as I update my project assignment, I will see that my timesheet detail will update too eventually on the, so that we will inherit the roles from that. So if I go back, my other example here, I'll do that on this one here, just so that we have that example for all the way to the end. So I'll correct that one here. Sorry, let's say 200, and then hit save. So as I update my roles here, my rates are going to update based on whatever I've implemented. You see that now it updated. I didn't have to do anything. This is another timesheet I had an issue, and then the bill rates are updating. And just a side note, I do have some documentation on the deck, but the details is what you want to correct. So if you see issues with the timesheet split not having the information, the detail is driving the information. And maybe just taking a step back, I'll go back to the timesheet to explain that. Sorry. The timesheet itself, just so that we have an idea of the architecture, for the ones that want to understand that, how here is the timesheet itself is the whole thing, the whole container, and then each line here is a timesheet detail. So each line is a detail, and it's basically what's driving the rest underneath. And then each square in this line here is a timesheet split. Timesheet split is ultimately what we want to look at. I think it kind of connects, Denis, with maybe our next topic from here.
Yeah, absolutely. Timesheet split is really a smallest increment in which you will find the information. And also you can connect and go back up to the project or the resource or the role. So there's a lot of information for this, which makes it the perfect record or the perfect object to do a lot of reporting and to base reporting on. Just as a reminder or some summary, what I like to remind my people, my customer, is the timesheet is really what you have your approval on. The timesheet detail is where you would have to make your correction if ever you want to interact with the timesheet split. And the timesheet split is what I would use for the reporting. That's kind of a big summary I like to do. So wherever, if you're a resource manager, team leader, project manager, you're trying to have an overview of how things are rolling, I would really use a dashboard or report. Maybe, Dominic, we could go to the timesheet validation dashboard that was created for this.
Yeah, well, I know that we've thrown a bit of information here. I know that Jasmine is asking what's the difference between the timesheet detail and the timesheet split. Let me just and I do have a complimentary documentation along with the deck I'll send so that you have a visual on that. But summarizing, timesheet is your whole container for a project, a resource, and a week. And then the detail is for each line. So a detail would be for a project, a resource, and a task for a week. And then each of those subcomponents are timesheet split. So individual entries, hour for a date, for a task, for a resource, for a project is a split. Okay. So sorry, yeah, you were mentioning that to kind of segue on the validation dashboard and what we can do with timesheet splits and reporting.
Yes, well, we created that together. We just customized a bit one of the dashboard that will now be available out of the box, but we customized it a bit just to show you the kind of information that could be displayed, whatever your role is. And it could be more resource oriented or more project oriented based on your need. And it could also start and only look at the timesheet split object itself, or even use a combination of the timesheet split with, for example, the project, because you want to dig a bit deeper, or because for a certain region, for example, or you want to segment with the project resource because you'd like to have people from a specific team, and so on and so forth. But if you look at this dashboard, you've got a lot of information that will ring a bell to most of you. You know, you want to look for a specific time frame. For example, last week we created a timesheet, a dashboard filter on this one. So for a specific time frame, you want to have these numbers. What are my hours? What are the billable hours that were logged this week? What it means in terms of revenues? What were the hours per resource, and so on and so forth. It's really self-explanatory, but also it would make of this tool not only a place where you look at to have these values, but sometimes a dashboard could be a good starting point for discussions or reference tool when you have meetings with your team. And what we also like to recommend using is the view as another user. For example, if you have a dashboard such as this one, and you're looking data for a whole set of users, for example, for a team, each week you could rely on this dashboard and view this data so you could set this on your timesheet set in your timesheet settings. And for example, select one of your manager. For example, a team lead would be great to select, or in our case, we'll use Oliver Operation. So you could run this dashboard as your team lead, which make all of the users see the high level data of what happened for the whole group. But if your individual resources, logging to this dashboard and seeing these numbers, when they will click on the report, then they will get their security kicking in. So if they are browsing and going to the report, they will only see data, for example, their own timesheet split. So this is another kind of very cool feature or way to benefit from the power of the combination of dashboard and reports. So I was discussing, Dominic, a bit about the report and the possibility of using timesheet splits along with other objects. Do you have a bit of insight for us, examples?
Yeah, other ways that you could do. And then comment from Justin here that, and I agree with you, this dashboard is fantastic. So yeah, it's something that will, if you're in the later version, when we have new dashboards, that should come along with the updates. And I think part of that here, this one here is a comprised of several things, but that dashboard, the timesheet validation dashboard should be available for the later releases. If not, then, yes, there's a lot we can share so that it can be easily rebuilt. They're basically, often it's really, we spin a report off of a sample report and we just change the filterings and stuff like that. So I have another good idea that we're going to do in January. I'll talk just later on the reports and dashboard. But yeah, in the latest release, you should get some of those dashboards, or they're easily reproducible. So sorry, going from using this here, we're really more on KPIs and team. As you said, we want to look into dashboards in every, in your meetings, you want to have dashboards, because I always say that when you look at the data, the quality of your data improves, because if you don't look at it, you don't know if there's issues, or you don't put people in front of data that they should have entered last week. But if you load those data recurrently every week, then people are getting used to keeping their stuff up to date. So looking at dashboard is very important. It could be KPIs like that. In our client, we use OKR to structure our business along with EOS. So we do have a dashboard for our leadership team, or each team have their dashboard so that they keep track of key KPIs they need to look into. But also reports and dashboards are there for operational aspects of things. So, let's say here, if I scroll down, I've included 3 other dashboards, which are more onto looking, in my approval process, maybe, or my invoicing process. I'll want to make sure that I have my timesheets duly approved and processed so that I can actually start my invoicing process. So now I'm combining here missing timesheet, which is a different animal, I'd say, and I will include an FAQ on how to activate your missing timesheet if it's not done already. That is looking into the previous week, who did not create any timesheet. So if there's no record, we cannot report off of no record in Salesforce. So that's why we're creating missing timesheet, which is basically just a week and a resource, meaning that these resources did not create any timesheet. So that's why we have that component by itself. Then we have timesheets by status approval, so that we're waiting for those people here, maybe from last week, to submit their timesheets, or do they have enough hours for timesheet? And then if I scroll down a bit more here, just to give some other examples and to segue also on the bill rate kind of correction and check, a sanity check. And it seems like I've corrected all of those. Let me just flip all here, just to all, so that we can get some exception report values here in my report. No, I've corrected them all. So sorry, I'll just give me a sec.
While you check this, Dominic, let me maybe explain the concept. Using a report to look at some data is good when you want to have an overview, but you could also use report as exception reports, or you want to highlight items that are not working the way you would like things to be. So the report could highlight or could show up some records that need a fix or that need to be corrected. I think, Dominic, that's where you wanted to go.
Yeah, so I did I misstep in my demo earlier and it corrected both records. I wanted to keep one, so my bad. Sorry for that.
Too efficient.
So yeah, exception report are reports that ideally it would be empty, so it was right before when I was showing, it was showing no data. That was actually the intended goal, because you're looking for exceptions. In this case, I built a report which is quite simple. It's looking into project assignments and timesheet splits. So you see, I'm using timesheet with timesheet splits and project assignments, just because I want to look into the information from the project assignments and the timesheet splits. I am filtering here for billable projects, but we could have expanded and get a bit more intricate as, you know, only time and expense project, or, you know, so depending on how you build it, you could be a bit more detailed, but the concept is still that I'm looking into stuff and looking just for exceptions. So now I'm looking for bill rates on project assignment that might be equal to 0, which we don't want, and flag it also on timesheet split that might be equal to 0. So it's a bit more elaborate, but a bit more precise also than doing it with timesheet approval, as I shown earlier, because the use case was pretty straightforward in the timesheet approval, but there could be cases where you wouldn't really see it obviously that there's an issue. So the report is probably the best way to look into making sure your projects are right. So same steps I would use. Then if I see something here needs correction, then directly from the report, we can access the project itself, find out why in rate card is it good, and then I kind of figure out here, oh geez, there's Colin happy, the bill rate is not right. So then I would do the correction as I did earlier in my example. So that ideally, not ideally, what you want is that report to be empty. Okay. So then you've succeeded in making sure all of those items are corrected, are proper.
Just a little add-on, because we're talking about fixing and correction. Of course, we mentioned that when we find the source of our problem and we fix it, this should rain down on the other related records. However, you mentioned if it's been approved, obviously these records are locked. So the whole timesheet correction duty would need to change their approval status while you do the correction. But another little thing you need to think about is if you go back in the past, these items could have been invoiced as well. So and doing those correction, even if you're changing the approval status and you're changing the rate, if they've been flagged as invoiced the way they were, this will not be changed. So all of different little items that needs to be taken into consideration when doing some data fix.
Good. So yeah, I was kind of looking also at the different questions we have. One, as you mentioned, on approved timesheet. So if the timesheet is approved, it would need to be unapproved to be corrected as we did. But always bearing in mind that, yeah, as you said, there might be other impacts then. So we want to make sure that we look at timesheets before we actually approve them, ideally. But there's always cases where we need to do corrections. And then just to wrap up on this here, other examples, just so that I explain what I have. Timesheet comments, obviously, you know, we can look into timesheet approval. There are ways to look into timesheets, but, you know, when we look at comments, if we're publishing or adding our comments on the invoice because we're T&E and we provide that information, we want to make sure that it's, you know, customer facing. You know, it should always be customer facing. Whatever you put in your system should be customer facing, especially comments here, because they'll be on an invoice. So it's just a good way here to look at all of those, scan them through, so you don't need to go through different timesheets. Just good ways to kind of mass consume data here with reports. Obviously, you can dig in and click on it, but that's all. These are mostly all reports built right on timesheet split directly. And then here, last one, just a sanity check for invoicing process, what timesheet split were invoiced or not. So again, based on filters from projects that are T&E, give me all lines that might not be invoiced. So all of that, again, based on timesheet splits directly. Great. So that's kind of the whole circle we wanted to do, starting from assigning your project, doing timesheets, and eventually how can we go and correct it. There are, as I said, initially a lot of topics we could cover on that. We only keep it to 45 minutes, but so most likely if you still have questions, then we'll be able maybe to circle back on a few topics here. So let me just kind of wrap up, and then we might have a few minutes for additional questions. Natalie, if there are some that would be interesting to answer live. So as I said, my cheat sheet here, not going to go through all those items. I will provide the link along with the recording in a follow-up email as well for kind of so people want to understand the automation and how it works. So rates to project assignments, a bit what I explained earlier, and Denis, rates to timesheet details. So eventually, as you log a timesheet, where does it get its rates? So kind of visually explaining that. And this one is a bigger one, an older one also from our Drakia past here, where we're explaining the architecture for. So that's interesting, still very valid here, so that anyone wants to consume that. It's interesting to understand, makes it easier also at one point to make those corrections, though we are providing those steps on how to correct. That's where we are going into a new experiment in January. We want to try, as we have lots of question and interest, obviously, on reports and dashboards. Kind of the end goal of where we're managing all that data is to look through dashboards and reports and get better insights. So we're going to try a new, I might call it the beta workshop. So we want to try a format where we have 10 participants, one per company, where we're going to have a kind of a group live webinar, not a webinar, more of a session together. We'll be driving and showing how to build some reports, but we like to have that interaction in between customer with questions that can benefit all of them. So we will send over some invites later, probably before the holidays or early, just after we come back. So at this point, the only way we have is the first 10 participant that answers, one per company, will be registered. And then if we have success on that and we have good feedbacks, then we'll most likely do that again. It's probably one of my preferred part of all that, doing and building stuff directly with customer. So keep an eye out on your email inbox so that if you're interested in doing that, so that you can log in and mention that you're interested. And I mentioned everyone's would be in their own stuff. I would be showing, or Denis would be showing a demo environment, but you could build along in your environment or in your sandbox if you wanted to do that. That's kind of the concept. And then the wrapper before we go to Q&A, just so that if you stick around all the way to the end, again, there's a survey so that you can let us know what you think. If you have further topics you'd like to cover, we like to get influenced by you and make something that is you find purposeful. This topic here was really more based on cases. So with Natalie and the support team, we looked into most common cases. So that's why we decided to go with timesheet, but it could be anything else. If we do get a lot of votes on a few topics, then it will influence us on the next section. And as we're doing the workshop somewhere in January, February, we'll plan up for another knowledge session here, and the topic is to follow. Great. So basically, Natalie, do we have any questions that we could circle back? We have about 4 minutes left from our schedule, and we like to respect that. So is there anything that would benefit anyone to circle back in the demo environment here?
Yeah, sure. No specific question in mind, but there were a few questions about timesheet approval. So maybe if we can go back to it and take a look at how easy it is to modify timesheets that have been sent for approval.
Yep. To
fix things as the project manager or the approver sees.
Yeah, good point. I didn't cover that. So yes. So back on the timesheet approval interface here, when there's something that needs to be corrected, it could be the rate that and then we need to go back to the project to do that, to correct any further issues. But if there's anything else, maybe hours that needs to be corrected, maybe a comment that needs to be corrected, or hours that might not have been put on the right task that you want to switch that, based on obviously on your rights, and there's a custom setting that is called timesheet admin that can let you the right to modify, when you're in the approval process, the timesheet directly in this record. So I clicked on the hyperlink and the timesheet approval. That gets me to this view that we've seen earlier. But then that section in the middle here is basically kind of a replication of the timesheet, but just for that project and that resource. And then I could come here and may make a correction in 1.5 or change the comment right from here, or even change the task and say it's not ad hoc, it's something else. So you could do that from here, hitting save. That's, because you have the rights to do so, obviously. And then eventually that's going to generate, either I switch the task, so it's generating a new timesheet. But if I would have just changed the hours and the comment, I could have hit save. And then right from here, either approve or go back to the timesheet approval. So the line here, just to be clear, it disappeared because as it's, I've kind of either changed the task or changed the project maybe. So now it's just that it generated a new timesheet in this case, so that the other timesheet can now be submitted and approved in that case.
So the correction once again was made at the timesheet detail level, and because timesheet detail is related to a task, if you switch task, it's going to create a new timesheet detail. That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
The way we're set up here in our environment is, and I think it's most of you, is that we have a timesheet record per project. So that, you might have timesheet only per resource for all projects would be on the same timesheet record. I'd say most common is that we have one timesheet record per project, per resource, per week. But as the timesheet was already in the submitted form here, it created another one in the background. Anything else, Natalie?
I think we're good.
Right on time. So there's been a few questions here that were answered live by Natalie and Martin. Thank you for support on that again. And if there's any excerpt or a summary that we can get from all those answers, we'll provide it along with the email and the recording. Thanks all. Thanks, Denis, Natalie, and Martin.
Great job, Dominic. I want to take just 2 seconds to wish you happy holidays and thank you for this work you've done intensively today and in the other webinars as well. Same to my colleagues, Natalie and Martin, but also to all of our attendees and participants who kindly asked questions, because we like that interaction. So Merry Christmas to all of you, or happy holidays to all of you.
Happy holidays and see you next year. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.